Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the shir this evening. The shir that we're going to be talking about today is about death of dreams and birth of blessings. That's what I would entitle today's or this evening's shir, and we'll dedicate it to the memory of Mr. Adolf Weiss, whose yahrzeit is this evening. Okay. There is, of course, much that we can choose from. Today, we're going to talk about blessings. We're going to talk about dreams, of course, all of Yosef's life, both that which found him great acclaim, and those which, of course, those dreams which got him into serious trouble with his brothers. All of those, though, nevertheless, were part of Yosef's life. And of course, blessings are very important. And we're going to try to deal with all of that this evening. First of all, we can see at the very beginning, of the Parsha, Yaakov has lived in Mitzrayim for 17 years. Israel, Yaakov. Of course, Yosef was 17 years old when he was sold into slavery. So that in itself, I wonder in Yaakov's life or Yisrael's life, I wonder how, as Einstein would say, everything is relative. So when Yosef was gone, how each day must have been agony. And now that he's reunited, not only with Yosef, but Yosef and the whole family, and he sees his grandchildren, Ephraim and Menashe, all of that must have given him extraordinary joy. And when we're in a joyful situation, time seems to pass quickly. Rabbi Yoshe Soloveitchik mentions that of all of the avot, we do call Avram Avinu, Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, Yosef Atzadik, but Yaakov or Yisrael has yet another title that we have conferred upon him. And that is Yisrael Saba, the grandfather, the patriarch, Yaakov. And in fact, Yaakov really was the first of the avot that all of his children followed in the derech. So, for example, Avram Avinu, Yitzchak had Yitzchak, but Yishmael veered away. Yitzchak and Rivka had Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov, of course, is what we call Yisrael, the founder of all the Jewish people, because all of his children and grandchildren remained Jewish, but Esav, of course, veered off. And so Yaakov is called Yisrael Saba, the great patriarch Yisrael. Rabbi Yoshe Soloveitchik also mentions that there's another reason that we could call Yaakov Yisrael Saba, and that's because he was the first of our patriarchs to bless his grandchildren. B'nei vanim kibanim, Chazal tell us. The halacha is, in some ways, it's even actual that grandchildren can be referred to as children. And so therefore, B'nei vanim kivanim, Yaakov actually instituted that with Ephraim and Menashe in the very stirring and moving blessing that he bestowed upon his two grandchildren from Yosef. And then we see that he goes to bless the children, but before he does, he mentions that he wants to be buried, or after he does actually, he says he wants to be buried in Eretz Israel, and he recounts the very tragic, painful episode in his life when Rachel Imenu passes away in childbirth, giving birth to Binyamin, and he buried Rachel along the path, along the way. And he goes out of his way to say, she's not buried in some obscure place. She's buried right by the road, so that we have easy access, so to speak, to be able to visit her throughout the ages. it is interesting that despite Yaakov's very sincere attempt to allow Rachel to have a resting place where everybody could go, there is a machloket. There is actually a difference of opinion as to where she's buried, and it's actually the Ramban has one view, and the Ketav v'Kabbalah, the Ketav v'Kabbalah says that it's another place. The one that we visit is known. It's south of Yerushalayim, and it's and the building that was built there was probably built, I believe, if my memory isn't failing me, it was built by Moshe Montefiore, I believe so, or Rothschild, one of the two great patrons of the 19th century, and even 18th and 19th century. I believe so, that the building itself was placed there. And for many people, that's the burial place of Rachel Imenu. And I would say 95% of the people who want to go to what we call Kever Rachel go to that place south of Yerushalayim near Beit Lechem. Now there is Beit Lechem, of course, is the Torah itself says that she is buried near Beit Lechem, but there is even a question about which Beit Lechem it is. The other place is ironically north of Yerushalayim. The one that the general public goes to is south of Yerushalayim, but there's another very strongly held place that Rabbi Yaakov Mecklenburg, the Ketav v'Kabbalah, the Baal Ketav v'Kabbalah, says that she is buried north, and so therefore we don't know for sure. But one of the things I try to tell people is that it doesn't matter whether you're standing within 4 feet or 6 feet of Rachel Imenu's kever. Although I do know a lot of men, of course, people go, they pray there, they ask her to intercede. That in itself is can sometimes be a question of theological correctness, could be. But the point is that the idea is that her spirit pervades us. Wherever we go, that we feel that we want to invoke Rachel Imenu's spirit and whatever influence that her neshama has, that's fine. That's good. So unfortunately, it's like this. The current traditional place where she's buried is right near Beit Lechem. And of course, Beit Lechem can be very hostile to visitors there, the city of Beit Lechem. So the good news is that maybe she's not in Beit Lechem. Bad news is she's about 4 or 5 kilometers from Ramallah. So I'm not so sure that we made out on that deal. But just thought I'd let everybody know. But if you're going to go to Kever Rachel, please don't say, gee, I don't know whether it's to Kever Rachel, maybe I shouldn't go. Kever Rachel is such a magnificent, stirring, emotional place. It's very good and guaranteed that, as far as I'm concerned, that her spirit will be with you and with us whenever we go and wherever we go for Kever Rachel. However, today we're going to talk about brachot. Yaakov Avinu gathers his children with the intention of bestowing upon them, so to speak, brachot. But if we read the brachot carefully, we can see that many of them are not the type of a bracha that you want to get. And Rashi takes note of it. In Perek Memtet, Pasuk Chavchet, Rashi himself says, V'zot asher diber lahem avihem. This is what their father Yaakov said to them, Vayevarech otam, and he blessed them. Okay? Now, it does say here that he blessed them. So now we have to deal with the fact some people didn't get such a good, shall we say, a fulfilling blessing. Let's see what Rashi says on that pasuk, Perek Memtet, pasuk Kafchet. Says Rashi, V'halo yesh mehem shelo beracham elakin teram. There are those people that he didn't bless, but rather, so to speak, he criticized. So that's not a blessing. It appears it's not a blessing. So even though the Torah says bless them, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay? Elakach perusho. Says Rashi, this is the appropriate interpretation. V'zot asher diber lehem avihem. These are the words that their father Yaakov Avinu said to them in their presence. Mashenemar bin Yazeh. Yachol shelo berach leRuven v'Shimon v'Levi. You might think, whoa, Reuven and Shimon and Levi did not get a bracha. At least it didn't appear to be that they got a bracha. Talmud Lomar. So we learn the pasuk says to us, Vayevarech otam kulam b'mishma. All of them. Okay, he blessed them kulam b'mashma. And in doing this, Rashi deals with a grammatical problem, a syntax problem. Syntax is the relationship of words to each other in a sentence, and so or in a verse. And so our pasuk says this is the bracha that all of these tribes of Israel were 12, and Zot Asher. This is what he said to them. This is what Yaakov said to them. Vayevarech otam, he blessed them. Ish kavir kato, every person according to his bracha beirach otam. So Rashi said that those last two words, Beirach Otam, means you might think that they didn't get a bracha, but they did. You might think they didn't, but they did. Now, how do we solve the problem of again, Reuven and Shimon and Levi in particular, who did not seem to get a stirring bracha? We're going to take a look now at Rabbeinu Ibn Ezra. Different people try to solve the problem of the brachos in different ways. And let's see. Here we. Now, Ibn Ezra says to us the following. I'm sorry. Oh, got the wrong one. I'm sorry. Hold on, please. Lost my place. Here we go. Here we go. So, Rabbeinu Ibn Ezra says to us that that the blessings themselves were really a statement of what they will be, what they will be, and that and therefore it's a statement and it's not a blessing. And here's your personality. Here's how you are. Rav Hirsch tends to agree with that. Here's how you are. And Ibn Ezra says, as I said before, that he had nevuah, that this is what will happen to Reuven and Shimon and Levi. Of course, this is after the episodes that we know about in Bereshit, but they and their tribes, this is what will be. And so therefore, it's a form of nevuah. Nevuah certainly isn't here a curse, but it's not a conventional type of a blessing. Now, the Ralbag, that this is Rabbi Levi ben Gershom, a remarkable figure in Jewish history, really a remarkable person. He lived in the 13th century in Provence, which is in southern France, right near just on the north side of the Pyrenees Mountains. On the south side, that of course begins the Iberian Peninsula. There you have Spain, but right on the what we now call the French Riviera, along that area was the border of Provence, which was a remarkable place to live in. They knew Arabic, they knew Hebrew, they interacted on a number of levels, economically, religiously, and other ways, both the leaders and the general populace in Provence. Some of them became translators of the Rambam's work. One of them particularly became a translator of the Rambam's work because he knew both Arabic and Hebrew. As you know, to translate properly, you have to be a master of both languages, not just know what the words mean, but to be a master of both languages and also have, of course, a feel for the author that you are translating for. Now, the Ralbag takes the following approach. He says, Ishkiach Hashem yitaleh b'zeh ha'ofen b'dveikim bo, that God supervises and gives his providential care to people who cling to him. And he said, you should know that that when people learn about what their fate is or what their fate could be, people who are wise will take action to change what might befall them due to their own character. And he says, Rotzel Lomar, I mean to say, Sheyodia otam ma sheitachen yikre lahem. I'm telling them, Yaakov Avinu says, I'm telling you what is likely will happen to you. Whereas Ibn Ezra says it was nevuah, that it would happen, it was prophecy, the Ralbag says, I'm telling you that based upon your personality, based upon the way you've been doing things, this is what is likely to happen to you. So that they should take steps, preventative steps, that the evil that could befall them, unless they change, won't reach them. To become, to do everything they can to be shalem, in the words of the Rishonim was to be, doesn't mean perfect, but it means to be, to live the fullest religious life, spiritual life possible. So therefore, if I know what may happen, then I can take steps to avoid it. If I don't know what may happen, then of course, anything could befall me. So he says, therefore, that the bracha is, according to the Ralbag, the bracha is that they know themselves better. And the better we know ourselves, the more capable we are of acting in our own best interests. Adam karov etzel atzmo, Chazal, that a person has intense, intimate feelings for himself, the desire, maybe more than anybody else, that good should befall him. And by knowing himself, or as Socrates would say, know thyself, he's able to become a better person. Now, Rabbi Yoshe ber Soloveitchik mentions the following. It says, Vayevarech otam ish asher kevirkato berachot. Again, once again, we find this, what seems to be a convoluted pasuk that I alluded to earlier. These are the tribes of the Jewish people, 12. Zot asher diber lahem, this is what Avihem, their father Yaakov, said to them. Vayevarech otam, and he blessed them. The pasuk could stop right there, blessed. But then it says, ish asher kevirkato berachot. Each person in accordance with his own, each person in accordance with his own personal blessing, meaning to say each person got a specially designed bracha. A lot of times, people go to very great Jews and they get a bracha, but usually it's a bracha which is anybody would want. Hatzlacha Rabba, may you have children or grandchildren or whatever it is that they wish to portray. But here, of course, Yaakov knew each of his children and his grandchildren intimately. So he gave each of them the bracha in accordance that was fit for them. Now, I'd like to point out, I'll point out what Rabbi Yoshe ber says, and then we'll expand on it. Each of Jacob's sons had disparate capabilities. Okay? Each one is different, with unique and often clashing character traits. Very true. Some people were very peacefully inclined, whereas you have Shimon and Levi, who themselves, of course, were inclined towards aggression, where they felt it was correct. the Ramban indicates that they all fused together to form Knesset Israel, which emerged through the combining of 12 contradictory traits into one coherent unit. What does that mean? It means that each of the sons of Yaakov Avinu brought their own uniqueness to the table. Yaakov recognized it, and each bracha reflects that recognition of who they could become. Now, according to the Ralbag, well, the Ralbag says that by telling them what their nature is, it can allow them to prepare to become better, to look at their faults as well as their strengths, and to correct the faults. But Rabbi Yoshe stresses here, and as does the Ramban, that each of them, all 12, their traits, their character traits, were necessary to form Klal Yisrael. When Jacob bestowed the earlier blessings to his children, each blessing was like an individual ingredient in a recipe. I guess it's true. I can't speak to recipes very well, but indeed some foods and some flavors that seem to be contradictory really come together to form a very tasty dish. This final blessing was given to all of the tribes to assimilate all the ingredients into that recipe. When the ingredients combined, Knesset Yisrael emerged. So, according to what Rabbi Yoshe says, and of course he derives his authority for this particular piece from the Ramban, who says that, and that's, by the way, now we see why it says Ish kevirchato beirach otam. You would expect it to say each person was blessed with his blessing, but what does it say? Ish kevirchato, every man's blessing, beirach otam, blessed them, meaning to say the contribution of the character of Reuven or Levi or Gad or whoever they were into that, as Rabbi Yoshe calls it, into that recipe, so that their contributions were both wittingly and unwittingly part of Klal Yisrael. Now, one of the things that I try very often to tell my students is that each of us, and it applies not just to young people, it applies to every single one of us, irrespective of our age. Each of us has our own unique composition of strengths and weaknesses and blessings and talents no one else on this earth ever had, does not have, or ever will have. That each of us is completely unique. The gifts that Hashem gave to me or to you, and you have to recognize those gifts. You don't let them pass. The idea here is Yaakov was saying to them that they need to, a blessing is not something that comes automatically. A blessing is something that comes through the work. The Ralbag says this as well, that comes through working on what I have. If I don't have a great voice, there's no sense in working on my voice. But if I'm the person who has a gift of mathematics, a gift of the arts, so then I must use that to be able to bring out my unique potential. I've said often, what does it mean to love someone? When you love someone, it means you want them and you want to help them reach their full potential, spiritually, physically, in every way. What does it mean we love our children or our grandchildren, or we love our spouse? That means that we are dedicated to help them become all the gifts that God has given them to live to their full and complete potential. That's, I believe, what it means to love someone. Now, these unique gifts that we have, each of us, I want to say, part of being able to live with, bring your gifts to full fruition means that you have to sometimes let go of dreams. Sometimes we have to let dreams die. Now, some of you are going to be shocked to hear this, but when I was young, I really believed I could be a shortstop for the Cleveland Indians. I really did. But I guess enough ground balls went through my legs. At some point, I had to give up that dream. Literally, I can't say that I sat down one day and said, this isn't working. Some people do it that way. I just gradually realized that the unique set of talents that God gave me was not that, okay? And so in order for me to become me, in whatever way that I am, and everybody here has the same thing, I had to let go of that dream, which was unrealistic, because the dream did not match talents or the gifts that Hashem gave me, as he gave to each and every one of us, different ones. Ish kavir kato beirachotam, every person in according to his blessing. What does it mean, his blessing? Not Yaakov's blessing. It means the blessing that God has bestowed upon each of those people. That's I think, the most important lesson that we can take from these brachot. Now, Rabbi Soloveitchik talks about Knesset Yisrael, meaning to say the Knesset is a coming together of all the various different people and the talents that they have. Ish kevir kato beirachotam. Everybody is blessed when we have a person who has, let's say, musical talent and uses it for good. Everyone is blessed when a person has physical strength or intellectual strength, or spiritual strength. All of us, each and every one of us is blessed indirectly by that. Now, I want to take that concept and I want to read for you a remarkable passage by Rav Kook. Now, Rav Kook, this book is called Orot. It's one of a set of books that are called Orot. Rav Kook did not compile this book. His son did. And Rav Kook really wrote and wrote and wrote, but he didn't usually put things into an orderly book fashion. According to, people tell us that he would get up at 4 o'clock every morning. Every morning he would get up at 4 o'clock. And if you go to Yerushalayim, you can go to his house. You can go to see the house in which he lived. Go figure the odds of this. It's on Rav Kook Street. I don't know how that happened, but the point is, this house is it's like just up the stairs, like many homes in Eretz Yisrael. They're part of a complex building, and you go there. Now it's a museum, so it's really worthwhile going up there. You can see two things. Number one, the Beit Midrash, which he had created in his house, Rav Kook. He created in his house, and there he created a yeshiva, which is known now as Yeshivat Merkaz Harav. Of course, it's no longer in that location, but that's where he would bring the great people in Eretz Yisrael together to exchange ideas and to work on building the state that he never would see. But the other thing, which is very powerful, I have it in my eyes now, he would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there would be his stender, where he would learn and write. But the stender was designed only to stand behind. He stood and wrote from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning straight. And the people that have seen Rav Kook's original manuscripts say that you would almost never see a cross-out. His mind was so organized, so fluid, that he would just write. He did write a tremendous amount. I want to read for you a passage that he wrote and to apply it to our parsha, which is, of course, the last in Sefer Vayechi. He's talking about, he died in 1935. So remember, the state was founded in 1940. But Rav Kook had a vision. It seems to me he had the broadest, most comprehensive vision of what a Jewish state can and should be. Again, when you love something, you want it to live up to its potential. That's what it means to love, and to do what you can to make it live up to its potential. So Rav Kook spent his life doing that. And he interacted and worked with and loved those who were religious as he was, those who were to the left of him religiously, those who were to the right of him religiously, and those who they themselves felt little or no connection to religion at all. This was Rav Kook. I'm going to read what he writes. We must arouse in the Renaissance of Israel. We must do it with all of the power that is embodied within the people. Hamachunasim, they are literally Knesset. They are literally a part of our people. And then he says, what do I mean by all of the power and all of the authority? B'chol Torata, through all of its Torah. B'chol emunata, through all of its faith. B'chol midoteha, all of its character. B'chol tova, all of its good. B'chol oshra, all of its wealth, meaning, of course, material and spiritual. B'chol kocha, with all of its strength. B'chol hegyonoteha, with all of its thoughts and the thinkers behind them. B'chol shirata, with all of its and through all of its poetry and its lyrical sense. B'chol otzma, with all of its strength. B'chol chom chayeha, with all of the heat and the intensity of its life. B'chol sichla v'haskala, through all of its intellect. B'chol mirza, with all of its efforts. The nitzchon kishonotel, and the power and the emergence of its abilities. So Rav Kook realized this is Knesset Yisrael. This is what it means, that you take the Jewish people, the Nobel Prize winners, and the Talmidei Chachamim, and the mothers and the grandmothers who have raised their children to lives of virtue, lives of contemplation, to look at things as more than just how much money did I collect, rather, how have I contributed to the strength and the blessing of the Jewish people. This very phrase is the actualization of Yaakov Avinu's blessing. All of us, all the way from Ruvain, all the way to Gad v'Asher, all those children had their children. We are the descendants of those people. And we are now contributing not only to ourselves, but contributing to the world through our Medina, through Medinat Yisrael, and through the strength and vibrancy of our intellect and our talent. So, Emir Shem, we will see you next week, Parshat Shmot, and may everybody enjoy and revel in the unique set of blessings that each person has. Kol Tuv, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, Takar.
Thank you very much.
My
Have a good
pleasure.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.